practice session of the weekend, the second weekend of DTM 2023. Hello everybody, welcome to Zandvoort and the start of the second weekend of DTM 2023. It's the first of two free practice sessions that we've got lined up for you today. Thanks for joining us. 45 minutes of free practice one coming up in less than 5 minutes time now, 12:20, and then this afternoon local time at 4 o'clock we get the second free practice session for the DTM cars as we come to Zandvoort, the first overseas trip of the season for the German touring cars and the teams and drivers after we were at Oschersleben a few weeks ago for the opening round. The other overseas non-German circuit's going to be at Red Bull Ring in the start of the autumn months, but we come to Zandvoort here in the Netherlands. First time for 5 years that the DTM has been here with free practice one, as you can see, about to get underway in 3.5 minutes time. The circuit is 4.529 kilometres long. It's got 14 turns and it's a fantastic circuit, a proper old school circuit that's had some fairly modern revamps and upgrades over the last couple of years. In 2020 the circuit was upgraded, but the circuit's history dates a long way back into the late 1920s. We are right by the beachfront here at Zandvoort. Beautiful weather. It's 24 degrees at the moment. It's going to be like this tomorrow, and on Sunday the forecast is that it's going to be incredibly hot at 29 or 30 degrees. The track temperature here, looking at the data, is already up to over 40 degrees, and we're not yet really at lunchtime. So imagine how hot it's going to be this afternoon, and if the air temperature goes up on Sunday by another 5 or 6 degrees, it's going to be possibly 50 degrees track temperature. So a very hot physical weekend awaits the drivers of DTM. This circuit, being just a stone's throw from the beach town of Zandvoort here, gets when it's windy, and it can be quite windy quite often here, gets the sand blown onto the circuit, which makes things a little bit tricky in terms of grip levels being predictable. And it's a very undulating circuit as well, narrow in parts, but fantastic areas to watch the action. You've got to have a good balance of car here, because there's a proper mix of slow, tight corners, but also some mid-range corners, but also lots of long, fast corners as well. So getting the right setup on the cars is going to be absolutely critical during these two free practice sessions today. The first race at Zandvoort was in 1939. That was actually a street race. The permanent circuit wasn't built until 1948, and it was actually designed by a racing driver, Sidney Charles Horton Davis, or Sammy Davis as he was better known, who was one of the winners at Le Mans in the 1920s and 1927 with Bentley. And you can kind of tell that it's a racing driver that's designed the circuit. It partly used the existing roads that were around here, but it's a phenomenal place. As I say, it's the first time the DTM has been here since 2018. And the first F1 Grand Prix held at Zandvoort here back in 1955 was won by the great Juan Manuel Fangio for Mercedes on the way to his third championship title, the third of 5 that he won. And it featured on the Formula One calendar as a regular fixture until the mid-1980s. Then it was redeveloped in 2020. And one of the eye-catching improvements or upgrades to the circuit was the final turn, turn 14, which is one of, not the only, but one of the banked corners here at Zandvoort. But it's the seriously banked corner, 18 degrees banking we have there. So we come here for the second weekend of DTM after a phenomenal weekend at Oschersleben, actually, in which we had lots of firsts. We had Front Pereira winning his first DTM race in race 1. We had Christian Engelhardt winning his maiden DTM victory in his first weekend of DTM in race 2. With that victory for Front Pereira in race 1, that was Lamborghini's first ever victory in DTM. And then we had an historic 1, 2, 3, 4 finish for Porsche in race 2. We have got a couple of driver changes for this weekend. So the three-time champion René Rast is absent this weekend because he is racing at Portland in Formula E. So Dries van Toor, who's going to step in for him in the BMW. So René Rast is absent this weekend. We wish him well in Formula E. And Dries van Toor, whose brother Laurens van Toor was racing in DTM with the SSR Performance Porsche team last year. So the Van Toor name familiar, but it's his debut in this championship. And then a driver that was a phenomenal single-seater racer and multiple Formula Renault champion, racing against lots of drivers that went on to make a name for themselves in Formula 1 and beating them 10 or 11 years ago. And that's Alberto Costa, who's stepping in for Jack Aitken. Jack Aitken, who got on the podium of the Ferrari in race 1 last time out for Emil Frey Racing. Well, he's at Watkins Glen in America, racing in the IMSA Sports Car Championship. So Jack's having to sit this one out. But Alberto Costa, who was his teammate in GT Masters last year, comes in, and the Spaniard will be a worthy replacement, I think. Our first chance then to look at the circuit as we get this 45-minute practice session underway. My name's Chris Hartley, and joining me in the commentary box for all of the DTM sessions this weekend, it's a very good afternoon to Brian Oliver.
Good afternoon, Chris. Good to be here by the seaside. I've got my shorts on, I've got my rubber ring ready to go to the sea in a bit. This could not be any more different to Oschersleben, could it? The flat, narrow Oschersleben, and here we are at the undulating Zandvoort, something really spectacular. Those bank corners are something very special indeed, aren't they? Yeah,
absolutely right. And lots of downhill braking areas as well, where the front of the car goes heavy, but the back of the car goes light. You've got the exit as well from a couple of corners where you have to get on it, because coming out turn 3, for example, you've got a downhill run into that hairpin at turn 3, and it's a really steep, sharp climb coming out of the corner. So you've got to get good acceleration, good traction coming out of there. There's the penalty box that we can see, which
someone's testing already.
Which Ian Jaguin, I think, wasn't it? Who's that penalty box? We'll get to this. Was quite a big talking point in race 2 last time out at Oschersleben. I think it's this huge grandstand that we have here as well. Expecting a big crowd here at Zandvoort for DTM. Last time DTM was in the Netherlands was at Assen a couple of years ago, and there was a huge crowd there. So yeah, always well supported, and getting into the busy summertime now, it's packed out in the town and on the beach already here. So a fantastic circuit this. DTM might not have been here for 5 years, and we've only got a few drivers like, well, Rennie Rast not here this weekend, but he won one of the races last time DTM was here in 2018. Lucas Auer was involved, Marco Wittmann was involved. However, you have got a lot of drivers, several of them who've won races here, that know this circuit from GT Masters, haven't you?
Yeah, none more so than Albert Costa, actually, because although he's sitting in for Jack Aitken this weekend, he was his teammate, as you've already mentioned, in the GT Masters last year, and they won a race here at Zandvoort this time last year pretty well. So Albert Costa, he's no slouch. He's a good driver to have in that seat instead of Jack Aitken. And he knows his way around here, but plenty of drivers learning this as they go. Very much, I think these free practice sessions, very important for a number of the other drivers who haven't been through the likes of GT Masters, learning this track, learning that banking, learning all the undulation and the blind crests, and they've got 2 45-minute sessions in which to do it.
Absolutely right. Well, Tim Heinemann is the driver that arrives here as the championship leader. Not many people, I don't think, including Tim himself, would have believed that sentence were possible before the start of the season, but he had a phenomenal weekend, and he's a 2-time DTM trophy champion. It's our first look at the banking out of turn 14. That's fantastic, isn't it? And yeah, Tim Heinemann, 2 second place finishes, the only driver to be on the podium in both races at Oschersleben. And the Porsche driver who's with the TalkSport WRT team had a fantastic weekend, because they had him with 2 podiums of the championship lead. They had Christian Engelhardt, who won the second race, and then 1-2 of the championship, those two, with a 9th and a 1st for Christian Engelhardt. He's second in the championship. But Tim Heinemann, yet saying before this weekend, well, my ambition going into DTM this year was to score points and get 1 podium finish. Well, he's already surpassed that with 2 podium finishes and the championship lead. So what he's saying now, Tim Heinemann, is actually this the expectations change, of course, don't they? Because I've already achieved that. So on one hand, I know I'm a DTM rookie. I know you can't expect too much as a DTM rookie in your first season. It's a tough championship. But on the other hand, he says, I'm the championship leader and I want to be at the front now.
He does. He's got big aspirations. He's one of the new breed of drivers. He's the first driver to ever come from sim to DTM. So the driver who made his name in sim racing. Lauren Heinrich has come, but he came via Porsche Carrera Cup Germany and various other classes. But Heinemann, he's come from sim racing, and that's very much the route for young drivers now. It's where they learn the ropes, and it shows that you learn so many skills, because Heinemann now leading the championship after 1 round. So somebody goes a little wide out of the corner.
Yeah, just exploring the limits. There'll be a bit of homework done in these sessions as well. Just setting up the cars, running through some processes, some data to check things out. Also, they're going to be looking not just at going quick around one lap, but getting some data and some feedback, particularly on tyres, you would say, with the heat conditions that we've got on a longer run as well. So that's something they'll want to keep an eye on. We're seeing another of the Porsches there, Lauren Heinrich making his way through. And here's that dust we saw being kicked up. And yeah, it was engine Guen who just ran a little bit wide in the Team Bernhard's Porsche. Only a little bit, no problem for the Turkish driver. We saw Lauren Heinrich, who set the fastest time so far in this session, 135.912, but it's Arjun Maini who's gone quickest just with a 135.874. The Mercedes were quiet, weren't they? They struggled mostly in terms of being right at the front compared to all the other brands who all had some highlights at Oschersleben, but the Mercedes drivers struggled. Arjun Maini, we know he's a quick driver, had a tricky weekend. He's got a busy season this year as well because he's also doing some GT Masters racing, isn't he?
Yeah, very successful at Hockenheim a couple of weeks ago as well. The Mercedes sporting director, Thomas Jaeger, he said he breathed a sigh of relief when the horror of Oschersleben came to an end. That is what they thought of Oschersleben. Yusuf Vega being the highest placed Mercedes. I think it was about 8th place, wasn't he, Yusuf? A long way back, a lot further back than what they were expecting. And those pesky Porsches seem to be stealing all the points. So although we haven't really got a competitive time on the board yet, Arjun Maini at the top of the timesheets, that's kind of where they want to stay this weekend.
Yeah, Yusuf Owega is the highest placed Mercedes driver in the driver's standings at the moment, in 13th place. He had a good weekend actually because he's a debutant and in DTM, and he was in points in both of the races, Yusuf Owega. So he is another one that raced in GT Masters last year and knows this circuit from previous seasons as well. But he got a 14th and an 8th. The next best place Mercedes driver is last year's championship runner-up, Lucas Auer, the Austrian with Team Winward, who only had 1 points finish. He got one 10th place finish in race 2. Top 15 now score points in DTM, and a change, or one of the changes to the regulations. But they are 1-2 now here in this session. Lukas Stolz is quickest. He's gone ahead of Arjun Maini. So Lukas Stolz 135.168. Now if Arjun Maini had a bad weekend, another Mercedes had a bad weekend at Oschersleben, I think everything paled into insignificance compared to Lukas Stolz. Had the weekend from hell, didn't he?
He did. I mean, it all started during free practice, didn't it? Where he damaged the chassis irreparably, and they ended up having to draft in a new car over the weekend, and then it all went downhill from there, really, didn't it?
Pretty much, yeah, unfortunately. But enough of the Mercedes, because Porsche's now gone quickest. Dennis Olsen at 134.218. Now, kind of a slightly stealth-like weekend, I would say, for Dennis. He was thereabouts, but he was never really sort of involved in the top action. He had certainly lots of good battles, but he did something that not many drivers did. He had 2 decent point-scoring finishes, didn't he? A 10th in race 1, but then a good 4th place finish in race 2. So Dennis Olsen, his second season of DTM, was a race winner for the Porsche brand last year at Spa. He is the driver 6th in the championship. He's gone quickest now in the number 90 Porsche with a 1:34.2 for Dennis, and that puts him over half a second clear now of the Mercedes of Lukas Stolz. And then we saw him pushing on the limits and going a bit wide through turn 14 a couple of laps ago, but Arjun Guen, the Turkish driver, also had a Porsche, 3rd quickest now, 1:35.457. The last lap for Dennis Olsen that he did, that was the one that got him to the top of the times. Maini's down to 4th. Frank Pereira was 5th. He's now 6th because race 2 winner Christian Engelhardt from Oschersleben has now gone 3rd quickest with a 1:35.4. And Tim Heinemann saying as well, that's quite a big factor for him already, the fact that he's got the experience of Christian Engelhardt, who, yes, he's new to DTM, but he's a very experienced GT racer, and Tim Heinemann's been able to feed off that. But also, interestingly, it's not just, he said it's open in terms of the data sharing between the teammates, Christian Engelhardt and Tim Heinemann, top 2 in the championship, but it's also all of the Porsche drivers share data, whichever team they're being run by, and that certainly paid off, didn't it, with that 1, 2, 3, 4 finish in race 2.
Well, it pays off. You can see it in the results, can't you? Porsche are on a roll at the moment in so many different ways, having won both races in GT Masters a couple of weeks ago as well. We obviously have a number of different cars, different manufacturers, different configurations, front engine, mid-engine, rear engine, all balanced up by the balance of performance. There has been some tweaks since Oschersleben, so the Audi has been able to drop 5 kilograms. Importantly, the Mercedes has been able to drop 15 kilograms, so they're a bit lighter than they were at Oschersleben. The Porsche, well, they've got an extra 20 kg to carry around with them. And then, of course, you have the success penalty. Engelhardt, Heinemann and Preining, all in Porsches, are going to be carrying weight penalties when we come to race 1 tomorrow.
That's exactly right, yeah. Not for qualifying, just for the race. The success penalties for the top 3 from the previous race. We watched Lucas Stoltz then, had a pretty good lap last time around. He set one absolute best sector, one personal best sector, but he lost out in the final sector. So overall, the lap was a little bit down, a tenth or so down on his best lap. But it was still a good one at 1:35.004 in the bright yellow number 4 Mercedes. We've had improvements for the van der Lindes as well, and for Matteo Drudi. So Sheldon van der Linde, who is another one that had a nightmare weekend at the opening weekend at Oschersleben, the defending champion in the Schubert BMW, all really because of qualifying, because Friday was pretty good. He was quickest in one of the sessions, wasn't he, Sheldon van der Linde, but he just could not get up there in qualifying, and that rather ruined his weekend. But Sheldon, third quickest now in the BMW. We've got a good lap as well for Matteo Drudi, who's gone 4th, and he's just on the absolute best first sector as well in the number 40 Audi. So Drudi, he's on a charge here. He's lost a little smidge of time in the second sector on the lap. And just so you know, the way the lap is divided up into 3 sectors. Sector 1, so we can keep abreast of the timing, that takes them from the start finish line through to turn 1 at Tarzan, which is a big wide sweeping, also banked corner at the hairpin. Great little section that I really enjoy watching the cars through. There's not really any overtaking opportunities, but the cars weave from side to side. There's a bit of a downhill drop as well. On the exit to turn 1, through Gerlach turn at turn 2, downhill into Hugenholz at turn 3. It's a great section, that. And then they climb uphill, and this really fantastic section up through turn 4. They kink right, and then at the top of the crest, through turn 5 at Rob Schlotermaker corner. That's where sector 1 ends. Sector 2 takes in the run to the top of the course through turn 6, through turn 7 at Schleibach. And then that's the furthest point of the circuit from the paddock and the start line. They come through Mastersbock at turn 8, through turn 9, a right-hander, back on themselves at turn 10, and then down the back straight, which has got a curve in it actually. That's where sector 2 ends, and sector 3 takes in the chicane at turn 12, the Hans Ernst corner, the big right-hander, almost 90-degree right-hander, underneath the high banking or spectator banking at Kumo, which is turn 13, and then the Ari Leyendijk corner, turn 14, that big banked corner. That's the end of your lap, and that's the 3rd sector. So we were talking about the lap divided into 3. That's the way it turns out. And Drudi, with his lap, went up to 2nd place, didn't he, with a 1:34.7.
That big bank final corner, the Ari Leyendijk corner, is wonderful because it does effectively extend the pit straight, because the drivers can take it pretty well flat out. At least that's what I'm told. I wouldn't, but they can. And so they go into that corner full tilt, and it effectively extends the pit straight, creating a great overtaking opportunity. That corner there that we just saw, the 3rd corner, Hugenholz, is actually a degree steeper than the Ari Leyendijk turn. It is the scene of many a controversy since it has been reprofiled, but it's an interesting corner. It gives them that big launch up the hill towards Rob Slotemaker. But I've seen many drivers tripping up there, and I bet you we see a few cars pointing in the wrong direction. There's me with all my doom and gloom.
Yeah, Ari Leyendijk, the Flying Dutchman as he was, the double Indy 500 winner. That last turn is named after him. He won the Indy 500 in 1990 and 1997. A great stalwart of Dutch international racing, mostly over in the United States. And the Rob Slotemaker corner is named after another Dutch racing driver who raced in Formula 1 and at Le Mans. It was one of the driver advisors on Steve McQueen's Le Mans film, if you've seen the Le Mans film. And tragically, he lost his life at the end of the 1970s in the Trophy of the Dunes touring car race here at Zandvoort. So it's that corner named after him. Kelvin van der Linde up to 3rd place with that lap, 1:34.720. That's actually only 13 thousandths of a second away from Matteo Drudi's time. Abt have got good history here because the Abt Sportsline team, they wrapped up their first championship title in DTM here towards the end of that season in 2002. Laurent Aiello didn't have a particularly good weekend actually at Zandvoort. He had a disqualification for the first race that day, but he got 6th place in the second race, and that was enough to wrap up Abt's first DTM title here 21 years ago. They won 7 times in DTM at Zandvoort, and both their drivers have had success here. Kelvin van der Linde, who we've been watching on track, get himself into the top 3. He was a winner here in 2020 in the GT World Challenge Europe race, and Ricardo Feller has been a race winner here as well in 2019 in the GT Masters. He also won in the GT World Challenge event here in 2019 as well. And Ricardo was somebody who had really good pace in both of the races, didn't he, at Oschersleben. Kelvin actually had good race pace as well, but qualifying was a bit of a thorn in his side as well. But the Audis from Abt both look quick at Oschersleben, and off to a good start here with Kelvin in third place.
Yeah, we won't be miking up Kelvin van der Linde's car this weekend, but yes, like his brother, a lot of work to do after a very poor Oschersleben. The Abt team, what a strong combination it is there, the Abt Sportsline team. And Ricardo Feller, we're expecting some great things from him as time goes on and he improves. They were out on the beach doing various training exercises and things yesterday. Great team, historic team, very, very strong indeed.
We're watching Marco Wittmann, who had a difficult weekend as well, including a retirement in one of the races, and the two-time DTM champion, somebody that's won here in DTM in the past. Last time we were here in 2018, he finished 7th in race 1, but he won here in 2015, and he's been second in DTM here in 2014, 2016 and 2017, and this was the place 10 years ago, would you believe, that Marco Wittmann got his first ever DTM pole position. So we wish Marco the best of luck. He's with the Project One team, the new team to DTM this year, but a very, very Hans Bernkamp team, hugely experienced in Porsche racing, and Hans involved in the BMW M2 Cup. It's not racing with us this weekend, but is at most of the DTM events this season. But Project One as a team coming into DTM, but lots of issues with the car, didn't they, in the first weekend at Oschersleben. So the top 5 are all in the pits now from this session, although Dennis Olsen is just leaving the pits now, but Olsen's quickest in the Porsche. Drudy and Kelvin van der Linde in the Audis are second and third. The best BMW, Sheldon van der Linde, in 4th place. There's just over half a second between the top 5, with Lucas Stoltz, the best of the Mercedes, in 5th place. Franck Pereira is 6th with a 1:35.2, which is a second slower than the best lap we've had so far. Lauren Heinrich in the Porsche is 7th. Mauro Engel in the Mercedes is next up in 8th place. Ricardo Feller in 9th, and Christian Engelhardt rounding out the top 10 as it stands. Alberto Costa Balboa is doing all right in the Ferrari, isn't he? In 11th place at the moment, 1:35.346 on his DTM debut.
Yes, of course, it's a very different steed for him. He's a Lamborghini through and through, as Albert Costa, but in the Ferrari, well, he seems to have taken to it as well as Jack Aitken has when he switched over as well. Times, it's very difficult to read too much into it with the temperatures as they are. A lot of drivers using this time to explore setups, also explore the track limits as well. You get the feeling that as this track gets hotter and hotter as the day goes on, degradation will be an issue. It's another free practice session this afternoon, but tomorrow, that hour-long race in the heat, and then Sunday more so, if we do hit 30 degrees centigrade, it might be that this race is won and lost on tyres. Although we do have a pit stop and a tyre change, making those tyres last for the duration of the race. And of course, tyres are limited. You can't just throw as much rubber as you want onto the car. So tyres are going to be an issue, I think, this weekend. Looking after them, making them go the distance, and making sure that you've got the grip when you need it the most. And with the temperature rising, Dennis Olsen at the top, 1:34.218. I reckon we're going to see someone in the 33s before too long. Yeah, and you don't know if they're actually going for qualifying type runs yet ahead of tomorrow morning's first qualifying session. Might just be sending other cars up for longer runs. You don't know what fuel loads they've got, what tyres they've got on the cars. Although Marco Wittmann going well at 6th place in the BMW. So there's 2 BMWs up there in the top 6 now. Sheldon van der Linde 4th. Marco Wittmann going up to 6th place. Dries van Toor's time as well in the BMW in 19th place currently, but looking to improve upon that. His best lap was his last lap. Tyre-wise, just to let you know how it all works, we're on Pirelli tyres these days in DTM, new for 2023. So for free practice, they get 2 sets of slicks, which are nominated for each car, which were allocated at the previous event. So effectively 2 sets of used slicks. In addition, they get 1 new set of tyres allocated to each vehicle. So for the free practice sessions, you've got 1 brand new set of slicks and used tyres, which is why when we get to qualifying tomorrow, you'd expect it to be
a lot quicker in terms of pace because they've got better tyres on, but also they're going to be running the fuel loads as low as they can as well. And then it depends on the circuit how many tyres you get. As going a bit wide there through the bank turning was the BMW of Van Tour. You get 3 or 4 sets depending on the circuit of new tyres to go through 2 qualifying sessions and 2 races. Here at Zandvoort, as it was at Oschersleben, it's 4 sets of slicks, so you only get 1 new set to run over the free practices. Team radio coming up, but unfortunately we're not hearing that from Marco Wittmann.
I think it's somewhere in the distance. Yeah, not at the moment, no. Just while that is occurring, David Schumacher has popped up into 17th place. He's getting better and better, isn't he, as things improve. I believe there was some team radio there. We'll let you know what they might have said. Yes, David Schumacher up into 17th place. He's improving, isn't he? He's starting to pick up in DTM. It was kind of a lively year last year, but looking pretty solid with an 18th and a 13th, considering the pace of the Mercedes at Oschersleben, and looking to improve on that here at Zandvoort.
Yeah, and considering his background really up until last year, it had almost exclusively been single-seater racing, so it's a very different step for him to take a young driver as well, one of the youngest drivers in the field. Thierry Vermeulen, the only Dutch driver in the field, he's the youngest driver in DTM this season, but David is certainly one of the youngest drivers, and was involved in that horrific crash that we had at Hockenheim in the last weekend of the 2022 season, but was a driver second half of the year, as you say, that improved all the time. Only the top 10 scored points last year in DTM. He got very close to scoring his first championship point in 2022, was running in the top 10 a few times, but just missed out. But top 15 scored points this year, got 13th, as you say, in race 2, picked up his first DTM points. As we continue to watch the 2-time DTM champion Marco Wittmann, their 9th place in the BMW. Youssef Awega's improved in the Mercedes up to 7th, but the big improvement has been Tommy Preining, who we'll talk about in a moment, because the Austrian making it a Porsche 1-2 now behind Dennis Olsen. So Dennis has done a 1:34.218, Tommy has done a 1:34.489, and he's just done the best, or a personal best, first sector as well, which is only half a tenth down on Dennis Olsen's, Matteo Drudi was quickest overall through Sector 1. Drudi's been quickest in the Audi through Sector 1. Olsen the best Sector 2 and Sector 3 split times so far. So it looks like another good lap from Thomas Preining. But before we talk about Thomas and all of the dramas that he endured in both races actually, but particularly race 2 with pit stops at Oschersleben, just to let you know that we had 26 cars on track, not 27. So the one we're still waiting for is one of the championship front runners, Mirko Bortolotti. He's not been out yet in the Lamborghini, so no news as to why, but that's the only car that hasn't been out yet in free practice. So Thomas Preining, the most dejected looking driver ever to get onto the podium in a DTM race, I would say, because he finished 3rd, but it's a performance which warranted a race victory. Christian Engelhardt, certainly, here is Thomas Preining, his new team, his new livery for the season, but still a Porsche driver as he's been for a number of years now. He's in his 2nd season of DTM. He was involved in that huge shunt at Hockenheim last year, having gone into the final weekend at Hockenheim as one of the hot favourites for the championship, actually, because he was the driver, one of the drivers really on form in that last few weekends of the season. Victory at the Red Bull Ring prior to Hockenheim, and the first ever victory for Porsche. He's gone quickest now with a 4.155 by just 63 thousandths of a second. But Thomas Preining felt that he should have had a first race win of the season in race 2. But there was an issue with the pit stop, which we couldn't work out at the time, even from the replays, exactly what had got on. But it transpired that one of the rules this season is that once you cross the line from the garage to the pit lane as one of the pit crew that's dealing with the pit stops, you're not allowed, or you weren't allowed, to let the tyre touch the floor. So this is actually before he came in to make his pit stop, not during the pit stop itself. And the mechanic realised he hadn't done his fireproof overalls up quite correctly, so briefly put the tyre down onto the tarmac in the pit lane, did his the top of his race suit up and picked it up again, and it was for that then that Thomas Preining got a long lap penalty, had to go through the penalty box, cost him 5 or 6 seconds, cost him the lead of the race, and he couldn't come back after that, so finished in 3rd place. But they have tweaked the regulations since then, haven't they?
Yes, I mean, it's incredibly harsh on poor old Tommy Preining. He had done all the hard work, and it seemed very, very harsh at the time, but rules are rules, and as we discussed only last night that if they hadn't have enforced that rule, then there would have been all hell to pay, because there are rules there for a reason and they have to keep to them. I'm pleased that they have tweaked them for this weekend and for this season, so that now both hands do not need to be on the wheel. The wheel can be held with one hand. I should think that his mechanic is probably still feeling utterly distraught about that. I mean, it's just one of those things. He picked up a penalty lap for it, which added effectively 5 seconds onto his lap time, and he served that. They have also clarified on the penalty lap that once the penalty lap is awarded, the finish line may only be crossed one more time. I think on this particular instance that Thomas did cross it twice, but they've now clarified that. So if a penalty lap is awarded, they need to take it pretty well instantly.
Yeah, you can cross the line once after, then you've got to take it. Tommy, as you rightly said, it actually went past twice, but Sven Stoppen, the race director, said we had some leniency because it was the first weekend of running that rule. And to be fair, Tommy had already had a nightmare in itself having to deal with that. So that would have been a real kick in the teeth if he got penalised for not taking the penalty lap and not even getting on the podium. Then would have been a result of that. It might not have even finished in the points if you'd had to have another penalty. But that is going to be enforced from now on. That's been made clear. So yeah, just to clarify the change of rule as it now is. So the mechanics are still required to secure the rear wheel. The idea of the rule is for safety to stop wheels running away into a live pit lane, which completely makes sense.
Yeah.
But as I say, this was before the pit stop. It was actually on the garage side of the line, not near the fast lane. So it's been tweaked now. So they're still required to secure the rear wheel or the wheels after crossing the line into the working part of the pit lane. But the requirement for the wheel to be held in the air off the ground has been dropped now. Part of the reason is that they don't want, it can be 30-40 seconds that you're holding on to one of these pretty heavy wheels as a mechanic before the driver actually comes into the pit stops. That's going to, especially in these heat conditions, wear the drivers out, isn't it? So they are allowed now to place the wheel down onto the working surface of the working pit lane, but they have got to make sure it's stabilised now, is the rules. So stabilised, so can touch the floor, but it's got to be secured and stabilised at all times, which makes complete sense.
Yeah, I mean, they took into account that if a mechanic had been holding a wheel for 30 seconds, actually then doing a wheel change is quite a challenge unless you're built like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And many of them are very muscular and they do lots of training, so I'm told. I bet you, though, that after last week, I bet that all of the teams have briefed their mechanics. I mean, it was a wake-up call for everybody that this is a team sport and you've got to get it right from the moment the pit stop window is open. You cannot get it wrong, and any one person can rob a driver of a potential victory or a podium. And I imagine that everybody was going, crumbs, we need to really take note and up our game.
Team sport, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Just spotted on the timing screen, car number 92, no transponder. Now that's Bortolotti, so he may well have been out there, but we've got no timings from him. He's just popped up now, actually, hasn't he? Still only 26 cars though, so we're still missing somebody, but Bortolotti's transponder's not working. He has been shown, he's in the pit lane now anyway, or the pits, but he's 21st at the moment. With a 1:35.7 as his best time. Priding, who set the quickest time, has gone into the pits. Olsen is back out there. Awega up to third place now. Yusuf Awega. I've been impressed with him. Another one, he was a bit stealth-like, wasn't he? Despite the bright livery on the car at Oschersleben. Points in both the races, and Mercedes top driver.
Yeah, I've been watching Yusuf Awega come up through the ranks over the last couple of years, and he is just always there, or thereabouts, to use a phrase. He's very consistent and a very useful driver, and you discount him at your peril, you really do. As we look at Thierry Vermeulen once again, the local driver, he's got a massive fan club. Of course, his father, Raymond Vermeulen, is the manager of Max Verstappen, hence the Verstappen.com on the side of the car. And Max does give Thierry an element of advice and coaching with his driving. But a lot of pressure on Thierry Vermeulen, not only the youngest driver in the field, but the only Dutch driver in the field. A lot of focus on him this weekend, a lot of cameras pointing at him. He really wants to impress. Currently 25th, but he's about to cross the finish line in a few moments. He's going to be looking to improve on that at 1:36.774. And he does improve on that at 1:36. Oh, I've lost him on the timing screen already. Where did he pop up? Thierry Vermeulen, I've lost him on the top. Oh no, he is still 136.465, so he remains in 25th.
That was a slight improvement.
But
he didn't move
go
up the
up
order.
position.
No.
That's me looking at the top of the time screen. Oh no, he's still down there. He'll get better.
Yeah, and he got his first point, didn't he, in his very first race with the 15th, and he just missed the points in race 2 with the 16th. So I thought he did all right actually at Oschersleben. What you've been talking about, Thierry, I've been scanning the list to go. Where's the driver that's missing from our screen? Because we've located Bortolotti now, and it's Clement Schmidt, I reckon, that's not on the timing screen. So Clement Schmidt, who had a good weekend by and large last time out, he's 9th in the championship. It's the other. One of the other Grasser Racing Team Lamborghinis.
There he is, he's just popped up at the bottom.
Right at the bottom of the screen, so we haven't seen him out at all, but he's not yet set a proper lap time, so he's been out there, but not yet, at least the transponder hasn't picked up a full lap time from him as yet. So a few drivers setting personal best at the moment. One of them is Lauren Heinrich. He's gone second quickest now. It's becoming a familiar story, this. Porsche 123, Preining, Heinrich and Olsen.
Yeah, the Porsche are definitely on the crest of a wave at the moment. They're probably going to have to throw a little bit more BOP at them at this rate. They won both races in GT Masters at Hockenheim 2 weeks ago, and they look so strong in Oschersleben. 1, 2, 3 here. Our highest placed Mercedes is Yusufa Vega in 5th. Our highest placed Audi, Kelvin van der Linde in 4th place. He'll be hoping he can repeat that in qualifying. Highest placed Lamborghini, looking there, see Mirko Bortolotti, oh no, Frank Pereira is there in 13th place. Highest placed BMW, Sheldon van der Linde in 8th place. And the highest placed Ferrari, it's Albert Costa Balboa in 16th place. So it's pretty mixed up further down through the timing screens, but the 1, 2, 3 for Porsche at the moment. We haven't got that many cars out on track. I'd say probably about 8 or 9 cars out on track. As we look at the turn 3, once again the big banked turn 3. Lauren Heinrich continuing to improve, 134.157, so creeping ever closer to that magic 33. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody is in that in this session, but as we've already mentioned, it's not about lap times here. A lot of this is about getting that race set up, finding the limits of the car, finding the limits of the track, as we look at David Schumacher coming around there as well. Lucas Stoltz also continuing to improve, as you can see from the graphic on the left-hand side of your screen.
So David Schumacher out there in the Mercedes, it's a second season of DTM, 21 years of age. Was born in and lives in Salzburg in Austria, but races under the German flag, son of course, the German ex-Formula 1 racing driver Ralf Schumacher, at 180 Grand Prix for Jordan, Williams and Toyota. Was a 6-time race winner in Formula 1 as well. Finished 4th in the championship. In his best seasons for the Williams team more than 20 years ago now, scarily, back in 2001 and 2002. But he is a driver that, as I say, started out the single-seater career path. He was all the way up to the FIA Formula 3 Championship. Was a race winner, in fact, in Formula 3. David Schumacher at the Red Bull Ring, got on the podium at Barcelona as well, just a couple of seasons ago in 2021. That was his best season in FIA Formula 3, where he finished 11th in a very competitive championship. He was 4th in the Formula Regional European Championship with his dad's team, US Racing. Got 4 wins in 2019 in that championship. So a promising single-seater career. Then they switch across to GTs and to DTM. Costa Balboa then is out there trying to improve his time. Alberto Costa, or Costa Balboa, he doesn't mind either, but he was always previously known as Alberto Costa, but GT Masters and ADAC GT gets the full name. He's 16th at the moment in the Ferrari, but up on Thierry Vermeulen's time. His best time so far is 135.3. If you could just find a tenth of a second, he'd be up into the top 10 in that Ferrari. So he's pushing on. Here he is, Formula Renault Euro Cup champion previously, and a driver that has raced against some pretty big names. Jean-Eric Vergne was the driver he beat to the Formula Renault Euro Cup championship title, and Jean-Eric Vergne went on to become a 2-time Formula E champion, was a multiple points finisher with the Toro Rosso team in Formula 1 as well, 3 full seasons in Formula 1, but Alberto Costa was beating him back in his Formula Renault days. This is 2009 when he won the championship with 5 wins. Jean-Eric Vergne was second. That year he was also racing against the likes of Kevin Magnussen, also went up to race in Formula 1. Nico Muller, who was of course a Frat Monona championship runner-up in DTM, was racing against him in single-seaters. and a young James Collado, who's just one of the drivers that went for Ferrari at Le Mans a couple of weeks ago. He's also raced the likes of Robert Wickens, ex-DTM racer, Daniel Ricciardo in Formula Renault 3.5, he raced against him, Brendan Hartley, who went into racing Formula 1. So he's a really promising young single-seater racer, wasn't he? And then he switched to GT racing around about 5 years ago after winning the European Megane Trophy Championship. He went into GT Open, then ADAC GT Masters, and knows quite a few of these drivers like Engelhardt and Pereira, who he drove with in GT Masters over the last few years, doesn't he? So he's familiar with the drivers, which is something.
And he's always a driver who wears his heart on his sleeve. You know exactly where you stand with him. And often it shows an awful lot of emotion, whether it's winning or losing. Never scared to shed a few tears, and a very passionate driver. We like a bit of passion and emotion, don't we?
Absolutely right. Lucas Stoltz has found a better lap, 134.529 to go 6th in the Mercedes. Personal best in sectors 1 and 2. The sectors, it's not always the case, but the 3 sectors are pretty evenly split here in terms of how long it takes to get around. The last sector is slightly quicker, so it's about 31-32 seconds to get through sector 1. The middle sector is slightly longer at around 33.5 to 34 seconds, and just a smidge under 28.5 seconds is the best sector 2 time that the sector 3 time that we've seen so far. Lucas Stoltz has just done the absolute best first sector as well.
Just to give you an indication of lap times, this time last year, qualifying for GT Masters in identical cars, you would say 133.471 was the pole time. So that's kind of the area we would expect maybe in qualifying tomorrow. Track conditions, I think, was a bit cooler last Sunday, the Sunday of the race last year. But maybe, as we've said already, in free practice, they're not absolutely going hell for leather. But I would say that we're probably looking at a half a second improvement on what we're seeing at the moment, maybe a bit more when we come to qualifying tomorrow morning. So
a little bit of time lost in sector 2 for Lucas Stoltz on this lap. He lost about 4/10 there, but he was up in the first sector. So it's going to be another decent lap. 134.537. How's that for consistency? 134.529 on one lap, 134.537, 0.08 of a second slower on the second lap. As a team boss, as a mechanic, somebody working on setting up the car, that is what you want, isn't it? A driver who can be mega consistent like that.
The dream ticket, consistency and keeping it up lap after lap like that takes a lot of concentration, and as the track is evolving as well. So less than 8 minutes remaining of this free practice session. It has flown past, hasn't it? The driver's still very much exploring the limits of the track and of the cars. As already mentioned, many drivers that are here for the first time. It's still Porsche 1, 2, 3. Still Thomas Preining leading the way from Lauren Heinrich and Dennis Olsen, and Kelvin van der Linde in 4th. Sheldon van der Linde in 9th place at the moment, 134.737, so about 6/10 off the pace.
So Clement Schmidt was late on parade, but he started to creep up the order now in the Lamborghini, the number 63 Lamborghini. The Austrian up to 18th place, and on a better lap this lap as well. Personal best in sector 1, personal best in sector 2. So he could be pushing up into the top 12 or so if he finds another half a tenth or 10th of a second. Got his second best ever qualifying in qualifying 2 at Oschersleben last time out. Luca Engstler, former TCR champion. Goodness me, he was one of the very popular drivers in the pit lane walkabout and autograph session at Oschersleben, which was rammed a few weeks ago there in Germany. Luca, young driver with his bright blonde hair, already building quite a reputation, and he was one of the drivers who was out there signing all sorts of postcards and t-shirts, and he had a big queue there for him, and loving this first experience of racing in DTM. Should be a good driver, shouldn't he, in this championship?
Yeah, he's a hard-working man. The last couple of weekends he's been working. He was in GT Open last week. He was in GT Masters the week before. He was driving last week in GT Open, but GT Masters he was the team boss. Nurturing young drivers, bringing up a couple of young drivers who had never raced in GT3 before. He is not just doing the racing, he is a man who is working every hour under the sun. Really impressive, but this is where his passion is, and he is loving being in DTM. He was disappointed with his performance in Oschersleben. He has very, very high hopes here in DTM this year. And if he's got Engstler in the name, he's going to be quick, isn't he? I mean, it's in the blood.
Yeah, always running in the family-run team, and the German TCR champion 2 years ago, Malaysian TCR champion as well. Beat the British touring car racer Dan Lloyd to that title that year, and he was the TCR Asia champion in 2019 as well, so he's been successful there. We've been watching Patrick Niederhauser progress rather a long way up the order with that lap, up into the top 6 now, but Maro Engel has just shot up to 3rd place, so you get the feeling there's a few more sort of qualifying type runs happening now. Maro Engel there with a 1 minute 34.167. Actually, we talked about Alberto Costa coming into the championship this weekend as a replacement for Jack Aitken. When he was racing in the British Formula 3 Championship, he was racing in the national class, and in the main class, running at the front of the championship that year, or towards the front of the championship, was a young Maro Engel. So they raced against each other in the past as well. Maro in the Mercedes now into 3rd place, and you've got, this is proper DTM stuff here, Brian, because you've got the top 4 covered by 63 thousandths of a second.
Oh, that's what we like to see. Was the betting that the whole field will be covered by 1 second in qualifying tomorrow? It's going to be close, you know that.
Yeah, you can see it already in free practice. You've got what, the top 14 covered by less than a second, and I think you're absolutely right when we get to qualifying. That is why qualifying is so important. Not only do you get some points for it if you're in the top 3, but if you are missing a beat around one corner and you lose 1.5, 2 tenths of a second, you're probably going to lose 8, 9 positions on the grid, aren't you?
And it's interesting because you look at that turn 3, the Hugenholz, the big banked 19-degree corner, and you can see drivers exploring different lines through that corner. Some are taking it really high, some are taking it in the middle, some are taking it low. And I reckon corners like that, which are not your run-of-the-mill average corners that you get on race circuits, there can be tenths of seconds lost or gained on corners such as that. And that camera angle that we've got looking down at turn 3, you can see them coming in different positions, all exploring the limits.
There's Maro Engel. He's just got to the top of the times with that lap from 3rd to 1st, 134.049.
Getting closer.
So that's a tenth up on everybody else. Personal best in sector 1, sector 2. Interestingly, the fastest 3 sector times, he hasn't got any of those. He's just had a really solid lap. So Stoltz is quickest in sector 1, Olsen is quickest in sector 2 in the lap. Oh, actually, Engel was quickest in the last sector on the previous lap, but not on that lap. So it's just a very solid lap all the way through that, as we're looking at the reigning champion running through shot in the BMW there. And Sheldon van der Linde slipped back to 11th. He's still the best of the BMWs. But as I say, last time out at Oschersleben, he had a good Friday. What he does need is to have a good Saturday this time, because that was his problem with qualifying last time out at Oschersleben. The race pace, I think, was pretty good, but it was difficult to come through. There he is with the fastest man on the track at the moment, Maro Engel, about to come past him. Maro had a bit of a run-in with his teammate, didn't he, René Rast, in one of the races at Oschersleben. There were bits of bodywork and Mercedes flying off in all sorts of directions when those two came together.
Maro Engel also had a run-in with Sheldon van der Linde. Oh, we've got one in the gravel, 94. Frank Pereira, winner from Oschersleben, and looks like he's had a bit of a problem. We'll need to see a replay of that. I cannot believe it's just a mistake, because Frank Pereira doesn't really do mistakes, but we've got the yellow in turn 7, so anyone on a quick lap, well, that's not going to count for anything.
It's right at the top of the course at Schleibach, that, furthest point away. So we'll need a lift back if he can't get out of the gravel trap, which looks unlikely, doesn't it?
I would say that's going to be the end of free practice, really, because no one's going to be doing anything too spectacular. They're going to slow everything down around there, aren't they?
No, except maybe this man, because he's gone past that, and he's already done the absolute best first sector mark over it, but a personal best in sector 2. This is the 2014-2016 champion, about to shoot up the order, and he goes all the way up to 7th place with that lap. So that will probably be, you're right, the last fast lap we have in this section, because they've all got to slow down through the middle sector now with that yellow flag zone at turn 7. So Heinemann also was an improvement just before that, up into the top 10 for the championship leader, Tim Heinemann in the Porsche. Replay, here you go, you asked for it, and just went a bit too skittish. That's one of the corners where it drops away, doesn't it? You go over a crest into the entrance to the turn, and then it drops away. The red flags are going to come out. That will be the end of the session, because there's only a minute and a half left on the clock anyway. But the good news from Pereira, although he lost the balance of the car there, just got a bit of a wobble on through the apex of the corner. There's no harm done to the car, other than it's a bit dusty and you've got to get some gravel out of it. But the gravel trap did its job, didn't it?
Cannot remember the last time I saw Frank Pereira make a driving error like that and end up in the gravel trap. He is a wise old pilot, and
Less of the old, Brian.
A wise young pilot, and he'll be kicking himself after that. Looking at that Lamborghini, It does look a bit ominous at the back, at the bottom of the table. It isn't primarily Lamborghinis. It doesn't look like they have much pace. Franck Pereira was the quickest of the Lamborghinis in 19th place, but everybody else kind of propping up the bottom of the pack at the moment.
Yeah, but again, we don't necessarily need to panic yet if you're Lamborghini fans, because you don't know what they were running through in terms of their process through that first free practice session. But it is always a nice confidence booster to have your name at the top of the times, which is where we find a Mercedes, Maro Engel quickest in that session, then the three Porsches of Preining, Heinrich and Olsen. Best of the Audis, Kelvin van der Linde. Good session from Patrick Niederhauser. We watched a few minutes ago with a couple of his quick laps, and a good run to the top 6 at the Nürburgring 24-hour at the start of this season. And the best BMW with that very late lap ended being Marco Wittmann in 7th place. Everybody got through the session. Busiest driver was, I think, Marco Wittmann did 21 laps in that session. Actually, Dries van Toor did 21 as well. So the BMWs were busy. Sheldon van der Linde was not quite as busy though, was he, on the compared to some of the others? Oh, sorry, that's the best. Like 24 laps was the most that we saw, which was Yusuf Awega did slightly more laps in that one. Only 6 laps for Mick Wieshofer, which is a bit of a worry. Didn't see much of him at all, did we, in the Lamborghini?
He was a man who was steaming after all sorts of action at Oschersleben. I've never seen someone slam a door so hard in my life. He was definitely looking to improve on that. So 26th is not where he was looking at. And as you say, he's been in the pits for over 10 minutes. The clock just stopped after that. He'd only done 6 laps, so you do wonder whether there might have been some problems with the GRT Grasser Lamborghini.
So here's the results of free practice 1. Maro Engel and the Mercedes with a late run till 1:34.049, almost into the 1:33s. I think we will get there. If not later today, then in qualifying tomorrow. Thomas Preining there in 2nd place in the Mante Porsche. Then the Team 75 Porsche of Lauren Heinrich and Preining's teammate Dennis Olsen 3rd and 4th. Kelvin van der Linde in the Audi 5th. Patrick Niederhauser in 6th in the Audi as well. Marco Wittmann, Yusuf Awega, Lukas Stoltz and Tim Heinemann rounding out the top 10. Matteo Drudi was up there, wasn't he, for much of the session, but fell back to 12th place in the end. Sheldon van der Linde rounding up in 13th. It seems a long time ago. Arjamani was top of the times. He wound up back in 14th place. Christian Engelhardt, race 2 winner and 2nd in the championship in the TalkSport WRT, only 21st in that session. And there were not many laps done, as we said, from Mick Wieshofer. Only did 6 laps in the session, so perhaps a bit of a worry for the Lamborghinis, or at least that one at the end of a session which was red flagged about a minute and a half early after up at turn 7 from Pereira, winner of race 1 at Oschersleben, went off the road, but there should be no real harm done to the car. So that's the first free practice session complete. They'll be back in action at local time here at Zandvoort at 4 o'clock.